The past continuous tense is a useful tool in English that helps us talk about actions or events that were happening at a specific moment in the past. Understanding how and when to use the past continuous can make your English sound more natural and allow you to describe events with more detail and clarity. In this explanation, we'll break down what the past continuous is, how to form it, and when to use it. We'll also go through plenty of examples to make everything as clear as possible. Let's start with the basics. What is the past continuous tense? The past continuous, sometimes called the past progressive, is used to indicate that a certain action was happening over a period of time in the past. It is formed by combining the past tense of the verb to be, which is was or were, with the base verb plus ing. The formula looks like this: subject plus was, were plus verbing. For example, I was reading or they were playing. Now, let's see how to build sentences in the past continuous. If your subject is I, he, she, or it, use was. For you, we, or they, use were. Here are some clear examples. I was studying for my exam last night. She was cooking dinner when the phone rang. They were watching TV at 8 o'clock yesterday. We were playing football when it started to rain. Notice that in each case, the action was ongoing at a particular time in the past. The past continuous helps us emphasize that the action was in progress. It wasn't finished yet. Let's talk about the most common uses of the past continuous tense. The first use is to describe an action that was happening at a specific moment in the past. For instance, imagine someone asks you, "What were you doing at 7 o'clock last night?" You might answer, "I was eating dinner." Here, was eating shows that the action was happening at that particular time. The second use is to describe two actions that were happening at the same time in the past. For example, while I was reading, my brother was listening to music. In this sentence, both actions were happening at the same time, and both are in the past continuous. The third use is to describe a longer action that was interrupted by a shorter action. In these cases, the longer action is in the past continuous, and the interrupting action is usually in the simple past. For example, I was walking to school when I saw my friend. Was walking is the ongoing action, and saw is the action that interrupts. Let's go through more examples to make each of these uses as clear as possible. For the first use, describing an action happening at a specific time, imagine this situation. At 10 o'clock last night, Jane was still working on her project. Here, was still working tells us that Jane was in the middle of the activity at that time. For the second use, two actions happening at the same time. Think about, while the children were playing outside, their mother was making lunch. Both actions are happening at the same time, and both use the past continuous. For the third use, a longer action interrupted by a shorter one. We were driving to the beach when it started to rain. Where driving is the action in progress, and started is the action that interrupts. The past continuous can also be used to set the scene in a story. When you want to describe the background to an event, you can use the past continuous. For example, the sun was shining, birds were singing, and people were walking in the park. This helps the listener imagine what was happening around the main event. Now, let's look at how to make questions and negative sentences in the past continuous. To make a question, you simply change the order. Was, were, plus subject, plus verbing. For example, was he sleeping when you arrived? Were they studying all night? To make a negative sentence, you add not after was or were. For example, I was not watching TV. She wasn't listening to the teacher. They weren't playing football because it was raining. Let's practice with a few more examples to be sure everything is clear. Imagine you want to describe what you and your family were doing yesterday evening. You could say, I was reading a book, my sister was drawing pictures, my parents were talking in the kitchen. Each person is doing something different, but all these actions were happening at the same time in the past. Here's another situation. Suppose you want to talk about an event that interrupted another action. I was brushing my teeth when the lights went out. The action of brushing teeth was happening first, and the lights going out interrupted it. When we use time expressions with the past continuous, some common words are while, when, at that moment, and the specific time, like at 9 o'clock. For example, while I was walking home, it started to rain. At 8 o'clock, we were having dinner. When the teacher entered the classroom, the students were talking. Remember, the past continuous tells us about actions that were happening at a certain time in the past. It helps us show that something was in progress, or to set the background for another event. Let's quickly review the key points. The past continuous is formed with the was-were plus verbing. It is used for actions happening at a specific time in the past, two actions happening at the same time, or a longer action interrupted by a shorter one. We often use words like when and while to connect actions in the past continuous with other events. Now let's finish with a few more examples to help you remember. I was reading when the phone rang. They were laughing while the movie was playing. We were studying at 10 p.m. last night. He wasn't sleeping when I called him. Were you watching TV at that time? With practice, you'll soon be able to use the past continuous naturally in your conversations. Remember to listen carefully for it when watching movies or listening to native speakers. The more you practice, the easier it will become to describe actions in progress in the past.